on YouTube, 4K, 1080, but hopefully it's all right now.
It's a debate, and then you preset things, then you change it last minute, and then anyway.
Yeah.
That's a whole other show.
Yeah.
This is episode I don't know because
yeah,
I'm
we
losing
wrote down
track.
here. We think it's 77?
69.
69.
I don't even know. I'm losing track.
Yeah, 69.
But yeah, okay, that works. Sure. I was going to guess 70, so it's close.
Mm-hmm. So Dan's away. You've got George number 1 and George number 2 here.
No, one and 2. Let's get this
thought
straight. Forever debate. But Dan is not here. Where is Dan?
Dan's getting married.
Oh.
Sorry, ladies.
I'm
Gentlemen.
sorry. Sorry to all of our viewers. We were
Yeah.
expecting to. Dan's off the market now, and he didn't let us come and hang out with him and do
We
the
had a
live
brilliant
show.
idea. We thought the culmination of our 69 episodes could be the live stream of his wedding. Wouldn't that be the perfect
That's what
sort of
I would do.
ta-da moment?
That's what I would do.
So, plan B,
We'll talk about it instead.
we hide in the bushes.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We do a rogue live stream.
We can
So-
do that. We can do that paparazzi style.
Yeah,
I
that's
gotcha.
right.
All right. We can try that.
That was Dave's idea. But no, today we're going to talk about how to live stream a wedding. There's a lot of considerations there. The biggest one that we're going to dive into is the networking setup. Because as you know, a wedding can be in a farmer's field. It can be in a Congress center. It can be just about anywhere in churches. So you've got to figure out how to deal with the network on that side. So we'll give you a brief overview of kind of a live stream setup, and then we'll talk specifically about all these locales.
Well, there's a lot to consider, and I think, and this comes up in conversations that I have with customers fairly frequently, where, I'll throw it out there because I'm just so used to this. I'll just throw it out, your live event, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need to be a little more specific, and a wedding is a great example of a live event that can be a very challenging event to do a live stream for a variety of reasons, different venues, different environments.
And a lot of pressure because...
A lot of very high pressure environments.
Yeah.
So we thought it would be great to kind of break that down, specifically talking about the trials and tribulations of a wedding.
So my first question to you is, why would you choose to live stream your wedding as opposed to just do a beautiful VOD video of it?
That's great. And I think everybody's familiar with the photographer, very polished clips, the 5-minute summary of the wedding.
Close-ups of the rings.
Yeah, it's 5-minute video, 4 minutes of it is the
Puppies.
bride, and then a minute of other stuff.
Yes.
Those sorts of very classic videos with some cheesy music overlaid.
I like them. I'm a total sucker for the overly sentimental wedding video. But I also spent a good part of my day yesterday looking at epic wedding fails.
Right.
And live streaming, in addition to making it much more candid, you get the opportunity to capture more than just the glossy, pretty side of a wedding. So,
Which for me, I prefer that other side because
it's
I
authentic and-
I just want to have fun. I think weddings should be all about the party, and live streaming can be a big party. I think probably the number one reason you might want to consider live streaming a wedding is for guests who might not be able to make it in person.
Yes, obviously.
If grandma's on the other side of the country and she can't fly
or won't.
what do? You want to make sure to bring as many people into that experience because it is all about your own personal community. I mean, that's really the point of a wedding at the end of the day. So making sure that community is involved as much as possible. And let's be honest, they're not cheap. So sometimes you want to invite 500 people, but you just simply can't.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
So expanding your audience to try and make them feel welcome so people aren't crying when they don't get the invitation, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
I think live streaming is a great option for that. So that's probably the number one reason, I think.
So let's go over what it might entail
Yeah.
to do a, let's say, 1 to 2 person, we're not talking... Is it Kate and William? Am I getting the names right? This is not the royal family wedding we're live streaming.
Those royal people, I don't know.
Not the royal people, but instead it's maybe a smaller affair where you've got 1 or 2 people to do the filming and the streaming part.
Of course, we are monitoring chat, and if you guys have any questions as we go through, of course, throw them in there. So how do you film that? I guess there's a few different options. What's your personal preference or choice to film a wedding?
I see 2 approaches. One is you're at the back of the room and you have a camera with a very wide field of view so that you can see the whole arrangement of what's going on, but you can also zoom in on the ceremony.
Right.
Okay, so that's the kind of obvious setup. And then you're with all your streaming equipment and whatever else you've got.
So a single fixed position.
Yeah, or even multiple cameras, but all kind of center around the back of the room. But another exciting position would be to be a sort of roving camera throughout the scene. And you could go right up close and right to the back. Now, the disadvantage of that is people are going to find you're obnoxious and in the way, and you're going to have photographers yelling at you, and you'll be in the way of people. So, again, it's a preference thing, but I like both of them for different reasons.
Yeah, and I think for me, again, because of what I like is definitely the roaming part. I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
You know, I was just looking at chat here, and there's some pretty good ones in here actually that kind of set up some of the other things we wanted to talk about in setup. Scott was saying that he did a live stream for his daughter's wedding last October, and it was great because his father-in-law, who was bedridden at the time, was virtually able to attend.
That's incredible.
That's exactly my point, Scott, and I'm glad that worked out.
Yeah.
Stefan was saying lots of churches in the U.S. seem to stream their services, and that's true.
Oh,
and
it's huge. We sell a tremendous amount of our equipment just to churches alone.
Webcaster, probably the overall number one market segment for Webcaster is churches, guys. So, you know, looking at, you know, setting up some of those different pieces, and Scott's throwing in there a live to stream the dinner afterwards, which brings me to some of the points.
Well, that was one of the things we talked about here in our list, is in terms of what would you want to cover? Like,
exactly.
So that the obvious hits would be the ceremony,
obviously,
and the speeches.
Yeah.
We remarked that in Canada the speeches go on forever. It seems like. I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
please
you
let
got
us know
that
if
feedback from
every time I talk to an American, and I've been to a few weddings in the States. The speeches are short and snappy and big thank you and goodbye. But in Canada, there's block out a good hour to two for the speeches.
Sometimes a good hour for one speech.
Yeah, but they can be quite moving as well. So you do want to capture that on video. But then the other part that would be cool would be to do some true behind-the-scenes kind of content of like the nervous groom or bride behind the scenes.
So anyone who's ever been involved in arranging for wedding photographers, a lot of the things they like to do these days is do a photo guest book. You can do the same thing with a live stream. You could have a live stream guest book.
That's cool.
Live stream the greeting line or whatever you want to do so that you can get that level of interaction. And as Scott was saying, the dinner, you know.
Yeah.
All the hilarious things that happen during dinners, receptions, depending on how wild they can get, can be entertaining. And you might want that, you might not, depending on how crazy things get.
Well, you're going to run into a time constraint at some point.
Absolutely.
You might want 6 hours of live streaming, you might not.
But coming back to Stefan's point, you know, the setup, if let's say it isn't a church and they already have an infrastructure in place, finding out what it might cost to borrow that setup is going to be very easy.
Yeah.
However, if you got a DIY, you got to do it yourself, or if you're trying to convince your
do more than one
photographer,
venue, because the church is probably only one part of the.
You got to move it around a little bit. So let's assume this is a two-person setup.
Yeah.
Is that a safe assumption?
Yeah, let's limit it to that.
Your cousin Bob and
cousin Janine.
And somebody else. You know, that's I think in a lot of cases might be the reality is that you've paid a photographer to do photography, but they're not going to necessarily double task and do.
And you're going to have
stream.
One of those people is going to be on camera,
right,
and not be able to deal with the streaming aspect and the cables and the audio and stuff like that. So you basically
probably
have
split task.
Yeah.
If you don't want to also pay a videographer who has experience in live streaming, it might be cousin Bob. So it's got to be easy. Number one.
Yes. Okay.
So that's a good one.
We talked about how audio is going to be an interesting consideration because you might get audio. Yeah. We could imagine three scenarios. You get your audio off the board. So
there's house audio.
To haul, you got house audio from a couple people with mics at the front of the room. That's really basic and it's going to work.
And that's probably a safe bet in a church.
Yeah. So that's your kind of obvious choice.
Right.
Another one would be if you're kind of roving around with a camera, you've got a shotgun mic like the one we've got up here, mounted on your camera. It's going to be quite limiting for the murmurs and quiet talk that you hear from a bride and groom at the front of the room. You're not going to get that at all.
And it's a great choice for those shotgun weddings.
You've been waiting all day for that.
All day.
And then the last one, which is my favorite, is to convince the bride and groom to wear lavs.
we were arguing about this earlier. If you're a groom wearing a black tux, I see no issue with laving up the groom.
You don't see a lot of black wedding dresses or
convincing-
white lavaliers as well.
Exactly. Convincing the bride to wear a black wired microphone on a
Don't
wedding
forget
dress.
about the body pack
And the
sticking
giant
out.
brick sticking out. Yeah, good luck with that. It'd be entertaining.
So yeah, not
And
maybe
if-
the best option, but
Yeah.
you might be able to get someone to get laved up. You could possibly get the minister to wear a
And in often
lavalier.
cases, they are in-house audio scenarios anyways.
Yes,
So
right,
that's
okay.
But I'm actually curious, since our friend Scott has done this. Scott, what did you do for your daughter's wedding for audio?
Yeah.
Now, we know Scott does a lot of stuff with live streaming his band's performances and stuff like that. So I'm guessing you drew from that experience to create your audio setup. So I'm curious if you want to throw the details into chat there, because I think I would start with trying to do the house audio if the venue can support it. And if not, I would probably go to the shotgun mic. That's my preference.
Yes, no, I'm with you on that entirely. So then it comes to how you're going to stream it. This is very familiar ground, which we cover on every show. You can use a laptop and use software to stream it.
With capture cards and so on.
Or a streaming appliance like Pearl Mini or Webcaster.
Now,
So-
Scott mentioned he did his daughter's wedding with the Webcaster, and part of the good reason was you can run it off of a battery, which we've mentioned many times on this show. And I think that lends itself to the roving camera scenario. It also plays into our larger networking discussion, which we'll get to in a
if you could be
second.
the one-man band with everything in your backpack and be able to just roam the room and do the live stream, I think that would be amazing.
And for those of you who caught our live stream that we did sort of randomly on the last day of Infocom back in June.
You guys wandered around the
That is
trade show,
exactly
right?
what
Yeah.
we did. We had someone with all that stuff in their backpack.
The only thing is, I find it's a bit scary though, because you don't quite know what's going on back there.
It's true.
You pushed all the buttons, you made everything go, you hope it works. So
you can flip the bag around to the front and wear it on your chest.
and you can get a little confidence monitor on the stuff, but you'd want to get good at that.
For sure. You might want to practice that. It might take a little more skill than Cousin Bob, but you
Yeah.
know.
So the safer method would be have something in the back of the room where you've got someone monitoring it. You've got an Ethernet connection, and you know it's going to work.
So audio, we got that. So what about lighting?
Lighting, you take what's there because you cannot bring your own lighting
Well, you
into a wedding
could,
venue
but
and
probably
have the
not a
wedding
good idea.
still look okay and not like
Yeah.
a scene.
And again, I think if you're talking about a church, it's probably
Maybe on
a safe
camera,
bet.
you might get something on camera that'd be okay.
Right.
But even that could be pretty annoying.
If it's an outdoor wedding, those are getting more and more popular. Then your audio and lighting become an even bigger challenge.
Everything
but
gets
good
more
luck.
challenging with an outdoor wedding.
Yeah, but
Like
good
the
luck.
wedding itself.
Yes. Yeah, the weather is the big starter.
Yeah.
But all of that, I think, most of you guys probably understand these different elements. Like that's, but when it boils down to what do you do about actually getting the stream? You've got your camera, you're gambling on the lighting, you've chosen your audio and hope it's going to work.
And you say, okay, I'm good, let's go.
Let's go. You've chosen your encoding type, laptop software, blah, blah, blah. You've got that in place. Now, how do we get whatever that is encoded out to, let's call it YouTube?
Yeah, sure.
Or Facebook or whatever. But let's call it YouTube, maybe an unlisted stream so that you can distribute that link more privately to people and it's not just out there for the trolls to talk and trash about the bride's dress. It's that's maybe the number one challenge is how do you get that stream out there? So there's a few things we can do. So we've just mentioned that stream we did at Infocom. And for those of you who missed it, what we did specifically for that stream, the backpack stream, if you will, is we used a Webcaster X2. And Lisa, if you go to picture-in-picture, I'll show you some of the gear we used. For our cellular connection, we used this model of ZTE LTE Plus, LTE Advanced Enhanced hotspot, which in itself can have Wi-Fi on it, which means you could use Wi-Fi to a Webcaster directly. Right. However, my recommendation to try and minimize the amount of problems, I like wires because they work. This one also has a USB connection. I'll try and pull that up here. There's a side with USB connectors on it. I don't know if ZTE actually has a picture of it, but there's a side that has a micro USB connector on it, which you can connect to something like this, which is a micro travel router. Now this one's from TP-Link, and this is the one that we used. Again, this one has a Wi-Fi hotspot on it if you wanted to, but it also has Ethernet and a USB port. So ZTE modem to over USB to this, Ethernet to a webcaster, or maybe even a Pearl Mini.
Yeah, that thing was brilliant.
And the other nice part about this tool, these are about 40, 50 bucks, sometimes a bit less. There are other makes and models out there, but this one we've used a fair bit. This one, it might be hard to see, but there's a mode switch here. That switch means you can select between the different things this router can do very quickly. One of which is the USB LTE connection. Other ones basically use it as a Wi-Fi access point, almost like a bridge, to bridge between Wi-Fi and Ethernet.
No, this is cool because I was asking you earlier, and we get questions from a lot of customers. Pearl Mini and Pearl 2 and most other appliances like this don't have Wi-Fi built in.
No.
So
just has the Ethernet.
If you had a little device like what you're talking about here, I plug it in through Ethernet to this little device, and I basically make this Wi-Fi enabled.
Essentially, yeah, that router gives you that bridge over to an existing Wi-Fi network.
And it's, what did you say, $40 or something like that?
Yeah, and the reason you might want to do that is that maybe the venue has Wi-Fi you can use.
Yeah, and not Ethernet.
And right. Now, again, if it's a hotel or a conference center, chances are they have Ethernet, but it might cost you to get a dedicated Ethernet drop into the room.
Yeah, but it's worth.
It might be worth it. You know,
I mean, if you're being paid
that
for
depends
it,
on your budget. I know the average cost of a wedding in North America is approaching $30,000 or something absolutely insane. But if you're not trying to do that, then maybe another $2 or $3 grand for an internet connection doesn't make sense. But if they have Wi-Fi, or let's say one of our colleagues a couple years ago got just married in a restaurant.
Yeah.
Right. If you do that in a restaurant, chances are they'll have Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Now, like with anything, because you can't control that network, you're going to want to test it. Make sure you have the bandwidth available to support.
And you
what
need to
you're
find
doing.
out who else is on that network.
Right. How
shared it is. Because if it's some kind of public network that they open up to all the guests of your wedding that are also going to be,
then it could be a disaster.
Going into there, you need to find out who you're sharing it with.
The good part with weddings is you usually have enough days building up to it. You can probably go in and run some of these tests ahead of time and get an idea. So that's good, and like some live events. But a little tool like that can help.
We have lots of good suggestions here in the comments.
All right.
We have
Yeah, I saw something there about live streaming the honeymoon. Let's not do that.
Stefan suggesting some 360 VR. Now that would be awesome. You need a pipe to get how much data we're talking?
Well, the best way to do 360, let's be honest, guys, is in 4K.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it just kind of looks like garbage.
Garbage.
So 4K VR, you need, excuse me.
40?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking 30 to 40 megabit upload speed.
Yeah. It's possible. In a lot of places you can
might be able to do that. I wouldn't try and do that over LTE personally.
We also have Stefan talking about
using a drone.
Using a drone. Using a drone, yeah.
Yeah,
like
that's
that.
a great one. Might be a little loud though if it's indoor, outdoor, hard to say.
Martin talking about using PTZ cameras, which is what we mentioned
earlier. That was your point earlier, yes.
And
fixed position PTZ.
In fact, when I was researching this show, we found a show done by the PTZ Optics people who do tons of live videos. And they were talking about, with another guy who does weddings and stuff like that, about using a PTZ cameras. And that was their camera of choice to use that kind of stuff. Yeah. So,
Stefan also saying, isn't a wedding normally a two-person setup?
Yeah, like
hey, culturally, man, you never know. But
yeah, we haven't seen many three-person weddings yet, but soon.
Yeah, let's see, Scott. Yeah, he did it unpublished to YouTube. Exactly. Sent emails. See, that's perfect. So if you can use any sort of house internet, again, if it's in a church or a restaurant or conference center, hopefully they have house internet you can use that's decent enough for your live stream. If you can't, you can go the LTE route. But again, ahead of time, you want to do some tests. Make sure you're going to get a strong enough signal. Run some bandwidth tests. Make sure you're getting a decent enough upload. And what if you can't get good house internet, but a single LTE connection's a bit weak? Then you might want to look at cellular bonding. So if we go to picture-in-picture again, we've covered this in previous episodes. We have an episode where we actually interviewed one of the guys from Mushroom Networks. This is one of their devices here. And this one supports multiple USB LTE modems.
Yes.
And will load balance across them, bond them together.
So it takes the strongest one, it'll send up that through that pipe. If it starts to get weak, it switches to the other one, right?
Or it'll bond them together to have one bigger pipe.
Oh, it does do that?
Yeah, in some of them, in the more sophisticated ones. So those are nice.
But for this one, you'd have to have a data plan for every one of those.
Right. So for those USB modems,
carriers.
let's say you're in the US, you would want a Sprint, an AT&T, and a Verizon stick. You're paying for data plans for all three of those.
Yeah.
Plugged into this thing, which is not cheap either.
Yeah. You know, this would be the perfect thing for someone to rent out.
It would be.
Because if I don't have to subscribe to all those data plans,
Yeah.
and you just get them and charge me a flat fee, that'd be brilliant.
There is another company, again, not a cheap way to do it, but there is another other than Mushroom.
Are these the
There's
guys you
also
met
these guys. We talked to some guys who make some auxiliary pieces for this, but they use the PepWave modems. And again, these guys, they actually don't use the USB ones. You can actually just plug the SIM cards directly in to it, and you can also plug in.
Because then you could literally take your existing, well, then you don't have a phone, but.
Right, but you can just get SIM cards, plug them in, and then there's also external antennas. It should. I mean, they do Verizon, Sprint, AT&T, T-Mobile, so it should be the same up here for Rogers.
We should get that. We were forever talking about these great live stream opportunities that we have, that we want to have great mobile internet.
Exactly, and it'll give you multiple gigabit Ethernet out.
Yeah.
So this can be your central point for a main sort of internet thing. Again, these are not cheap products, but if you're trying to do this at a professional level, it's probably worth the investment. You know, and so for you guys out there who are wedding photographers who might want to break into this as an expansion of your business, this is maybe some of the level of gear you might want to look at to be able to offer that service. But as always, as you know, not to beat a dead horse, but we've said it on the show many, many times, test, test, test. Make sure that bandwidth that you get many different readings so that you know what your average is, your low average, because that's probably, you know, just like everything with live events and especially weddings, if something can go wrong, it probably will. So make sure that you're prepared for the worst case scenario and not the best. But assuming all that's running, if you've gone with, you know, whatever camera setup, that guy with the backpack and the batteries running everything, which is the other nice part, going back to that TP-Link micro router I pointed out, it's powered over USB, so you can actually power that and that ZTE, a hotspot, off one battery.
That's awesome.
And then you could have a second. Right, and we did it with two batteries, two Anchor 26800 batteries, one for Webcaster and one for the network gear, and it worked great.
Clarence is asking to put we'll put links to all of these products in the comments after the show, because we're talking through a number of things. So.
But if you search ZTE Warp Connect, you'll find the model we're talking about pretty quickly.
Okay.
Again, ZTE, it depends regionally and where geographically where you are on how easy it is to get these ZTE devices. There are other brands and models out there, guys. I know that Netgear actually makes one. That I think someone mentioned it in there. You know, the Netgear. I don't remember if it's that one, but Netgear makes one that I know is very popular in Europe. It's part of their high-end line. I didn't have it up here in a tab.
Yeah, Europe's pretty far ahead on this stuff.
But it's apparently the best rated one out there on the market. It's like the Netgear Nighthawk something.
Okay.
That one's not really available in Canada, so that's not really on the table for us to get. So we've been looking at other stuff. I know that was very popular in Europe.
It'd be nice for us to be able to document this stuff.
We want to.
Say, this is a great mobile setup for, because they're so region specific, it's hard for us to speak about it in a general way.
So this ZTE one, our colleague Victor was able to get one of these with unlimited data for a very low price. And he uses a similar setup for his home internet now.
But you can't get it anymore.
No. That deal was gone. But again, you know, some people are using this as their home internet now if you can get an unlimited plan.
Yeah.
And that's another fair point. If you're going to go cellular LTE, make sure that whatever plans you're getting don't have limited data so that your cost to stream doesn't escalate out of control. Because let's be honest, if you're going to stream a ceremony and some auxiliary speeches and all these other kind of things, you might be streaming for
You might have
hours.
up to 50 gigabytes of data
Exactly.
being transferred. I think we did it for about an hour, and we ran through about 10.
Exactly. Here in Canada, it's been released recently, we have the worst data plans on the planet.
Most expensive.
Most expensive, and some of the
And probably
worst.
the poorest coverage because of our low
Yeah,
density, right?
and also the cost and for
Yes.
per gig,
Yeah.
and they're all capped. There's no such thing as unlimited data really in
Yeah.
Canada. So if you wanted to have a reasonable cost, make sure you check with whatever your data plan is. If it's a 2 or 3 or even 5 gig data plan and you want to stream for 2 to 3 or 4 hours, you're probably going to blow through that, and it's going to cost you extra. So it's something to keep in mind. And if you can get an unlimited data plan, again, Europeans have this wonderful thing where you can get unlimited data in Europe for like $15.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's so cheap.
Oh, wow.
My buddy's in Latvia right now, and that's exactly what he's doing.
Cool.
Yeah. So there it is.
Yeah, so you have Wi-Fi or Ethernet as your best option from the venue, and if
Yeah.
not, some kind of cellular setup.
Yeah.
I'm going to use my satellite truck.
Yeah. Because we all have one of those laying around.
Yeah, but for the rest of you.
Yeah, cast off from the news. Yeah. So, are there any other?
Well, we had a question early on. Let me see if
Sure.
I can pull that up about our setup today. Just gonna put
set
it
up
on.
today. Today's not the wedding. Yes. Peter.
Noting that we had a little bit more bokeh in our setup today, and that's because I cranked up the aperture on our Sony A6300. It's just a little small SLR, but you can put on great lenses and good glass and get nice pictures. So that's what we did today.
Yeah, you were playing with that earlier, and
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know, it looks fine.
You know,
to me.
I usually set it up depends. If we have stuff to talk about, because then I put my hands out here and we have gear,
Right.
then they're out of focus.
Right.
So
But for this today, we can
Yeah.
kind of play with those steps.
And people talking about just different applications too. We have people talking about weddings being streamed and churches streaming them, and people talking about wanting to stream public meetings from Clarence Mentor. That's a good idea. We get a lot of talking about big applications like
Yep.
we sell a lot of product to churches. We also sell a lot of products to people who are doing public meetings because in the States, transparency is the big thing, and they all these local governments want to be transparent and live stream everything. So that would be another interesting show.
We, not that long ago here in Ontario, Canada, we just went through an election cycle provincially, and a lot of smaller communities, when they hosted local debates for their candidates,
live stream it all?
they would live stream them depending on who was hosting the event, because you can't always rely on the local news networks to cover every single debate, and they're not always broadcast at times where everybody in every community can see them. And so there were a lot of people doing live streams of those types of things, which is exactly a public meeting style of event.
So lots of people just chatting about the different kinds of mobile setups or modems and routers that they use. So
No, that's great.
We need to dig into this a little bit more and
We
find
do.
out more about it because people like to talk about it. So
Yeah, I think we definitely need to do one where we need to run through a bunch of these devices, LTE hotspots,
we
and
do.
do our own comparison. Because I can see Fareed's mentioning exactly the one I was saying earlier, the Nighthawk MR1100. If you look up ratings, that one's got amazing reviews. Everyone's
this
like,
is the one you
it's the
said
greatest.
is great in Europe.
Right, but basically there's no carriers in Canada that use it.
Yeah.
So, and it seems to be one that's often locked to those carriers. So if they don't carry it, you can't really. So again, geographically, those things kind of change a bit. So, but yeah, we would like to experiment with that, and because we want, for our own usage, want to build a kit that we put into our trade show gear as our portable network, no matter where we go.
Yes.
We're going to have
Which
that.
we did for Infocom.
Yes.
Because it saves us buying the ridiculously expensive.
Right. Exactly, but that was a beta test. We wanted a dedicated
and
setup.
we haven't figured it out for Europe yet. So
Yeah.
thanks for the tips here in the chat.
Yeah, well, that's great.
So we wish Dan Wallace
All the best, of
all the
course,
best.
and a good luck
And
on
Katie.
the biggest day. And we'll see Dan back here in not too long.
Yeah, he's got a couple of
bit of
days, and then he's got something planned for later in the year where he's going to go away for a little bit.
Yeah.
But
I know how those planning days are. They're crazy, stressful,
yeah,
stressful times.
he was looking a little bleary,
Yeah.
bleary-eyed yesterday when he was leaving on his last day because he has lots to do.
All right, but that's going to wrap up for today.
Yeah.
Please keep the chat going there in the comments and throw any questions you have and any ideas you have, experiences you have. Scott, any of those tips?
Yes.
You're obviously the guy who's done this.
And subscribe to the channel. Like this video. It helps us.
Yeah.
Keeps you informed too.
And we'll be back next week with another streaming topic of some kind.
Don't know what yet.
I don't know what it is
Put
yet.
your suggestions into this chat.
Yeah, we'll figure that out. So appreciate everyone for joining us today, and we'll see you next week. We're here all the time, live at Epiphan, 3 o'clock Eastern on Thursdays, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
See ya.